Welcome to The Explainer. Let's jump right into this, because we're tackling something massive today. Have you ever actually stopped to think about why millions of people across the world have spent centuries, literally hundreds of years, searching for a single cup? Just one cup, which supposedly possesses unimaginable power. I mean, we're talking about an object that kings lusted after, knights literally died for, and modern-day treasure hunters still dream of finding. Yep, we're talking about the Holy Grail. Today, we're diving deep into that fascinating intersection where faith, history, and legend just smash together. It's honestly one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, and we're going to break down exactly what the evidence actually shows us.
So what if the story you've always heard is really only a fraction of the truth? Let's go ahead and peel back the very first layer of this massive mystery. Now, we all know the New Testament describes Jesus sharing bread and wine at the Last Supper in Jerusalem, right around 33 AD, and he gave that meal a profound symbolic meaning that is still entirely central to Christian worship today. But here's the wild part, and this always surprises people. The phrase Holy Grail. It never actually appears in the Bible. Not once, nowhere in any of the biblical texts is the cup from the Last Supper referred to by that specific name.
So that begs the question, if it wasn't in the Bible, where did the whole concept even come from? Well, think about the timeline for a second. The concept of the Grail didn't pop up in the 1st century. It actually appeared almost 1,200 years later. Yeah, a massive gap. It wasn't until 1190 AD, right in the late 12th century, that the French poet Christian de Troyes introduced this mysterious object he simply called a Grail in his Arthurian romance stories. You have to remember, Europe at the time was totally obsessed with tales of magical kingdoms and epic adventures. So originally, the Grail started as a literary device, not some officially recognized historical Christian relic.
Now, Christian de Troyes' object was initially pretty undefined, but it got dramatically expanded by later medieval writers. They're the ones who took this mysterious Grail and totally transformed it into the ultimate sacred vessel associated directly with Jesus Christ. Over time, it morphed into the supreme symbol of absolute purity and divine grace. And honestly, this literary evolution is exactly what sparked those epic, legendary quests you've probably heard of, the ones led by Arthurian knights like Sir Percival, Sir Bors, and of course, the famous Sir Galahad.
Here's the crucial takeaway, though. The Grail quickly became way more than just a shiny object to hunt down. It evolved into this ultimate, supreme test of human character. To even lay eyes on it, a knight needed serious compassion, absolute humility, wisdom, complete faith, unshakable moral integrity, and total self-sacrifice. It was an impossibly high bar. In fact, according to medieval legend, pretty much everyone failed. Only Sir Galahad actually achieved the pristine purity required to experience the relic's miraculous power. But whether these knights were real historical figures or not, their stories completely rewired Western literature and culture for centuries to come.
All right, let's step out of the realm of medieval literature for a second and come back to the real world. Because we have to ask, could the Grail actually exist out there? See, as belief in the legend started to snowball, so did the intense, real-world desire to physically find it. All across Europe, you suddenly had churches, monasteries, and even royals making these incredibly bold claims that they possessed the authentic, real-deal cup of Christ. People desperately wanted something tangible to hold on to, right? Something that brought the myth out of the storybooks and straight into reality.
Let's impartially weigh the top real-world contenders that came out of this craze. First up is the Holy Chalice, which is heavily guarded in Valencia, Spain. And look, scientific analysis actually does show that parts of this agate vessel date all the way back to the ancient world, which makes it super historically significant. Then you've got the Sacro Catino over in Italy, possessing its own incredibly fascinating backstory. But here's the bottom line. Despite the genuinely ancient origins of some of these parts, no single artifact has ever achieved universal acceptance among mainstream historians or archaeologists as the verified cup used by Jesus.
Which brings us to another really fun piece of the puzzle, the legend of Joseph of Arimathea. Popular folklore insists that this follower of Jesus grabbed the sacred cup, carried it all the way across Europe, and hid it somewhere in England to protect its unimaginable power. This one story alone turned sleepy English villages and old abbeys into hotbeds of mystery and massive pilgrimage sites. But as an explainer, I've got to be perfectly clear about the data here. Historians have found absolutely zero contemporary evidence confirming this journey ever took place. It is deeply rooted folklore. Highly influential for sure, but still folklore.
Okay, now we get to dive into history's most enigmatic organization, the Knights Templar. Founded back in the early 12th century, originally just to protect travelers and pilgrims, they very quickly blew up into this massively wealthy, incredibly powerful military order. And their time station in Jerusalem sparked the most exciting rumor of the entire Grail mythos. The idea that while they were secretly excavating deep beneath the Temple Mount, they stumbled upon extraordinary relics, including the Holy Grail itself.
Sounds like a Hollywood movie, right? But what does the actual historical data tell us? Well, looking at the evidence impartially, there is absolutely no mention of the Holy Grail in any surviving Templar inventories or records. None. They were meticulous record keepers of valuable objects, but the Grail just isn't on the list. Contrast that hard data with the legendary claims that totally exploded after the order was suddenly dissolved in the early 14th century. Rumors went wild that the Grail was secretly whisked away and hidden in a Scottish chapel or somewhere in rural France. The gap between documented history and enduring legend here is just massive.
Now, let's fast forward to the modern era, because the 20th century completely flipped the script. Best-selling books and huge documentaries shifted the entire interpretation of the Grail. Instead of treating it as a literal, physical cup you could drink from, authors started arguing that the Grail was purely symbolic. They pitched the idea that it actually represents a sacred bloodline, or maybe explosive hidden knowledge that was deliberately covered up by powerful institutions. And honestly, this idea captivated millions. Why? Because it transformed a lost artifact into a hidden, forbidden truth that could literally rewrite human history.
And of course, that level of fascination opened the floodgates for even more extraordinary theories. On one side of the spectrum, you have the ancient alien speculative framework. This theory proposes that the Grail isn't a cup and it isn't a bloodline, but rather advanced non-human technology or sophisticated lost knowledge given to us by extraterrestrials. On the flip side, mainstream history firmly states that there's simply no verified archaeological proof for any of this. Mainstream historians and biblical scholars look at these claims as highly imaginative hypotheses that just lack established facts. We're certainly not taking sides here, but it's fascinating to see just how incredibly wide the interpretations of this single mystery have become today.
Yet, with all of that said, we absolutely must remember one vital thing. Human history is still entirely incomplete. I mean, think about it. Entire ancient cities are still being revealed beneath desert sands today. Long-forgotten tombs are just now emerging from dense jumbles, and centuries-old shipwrecks are constantly being discovered resting on the ocean floor. Modern archaeology pulls off miracles all the time, so it genuinely forces us to ask, could the Grail theoretically be an ordinary first-century missing artifact that actually managed to survive 2 millennia? With countless manuscripts still undeciphered and sites unexcavated, it is certainly possible.
Which brings us to this really profound realization. As the saying goes, the search for the Holy Grail is not only a search for an ancient object, it is a search for truth itself. A lot of scholars argue we might just be asking the wrong question by obsessing over a physical cup. The true purpose of the Grail may have always been symbolic. It beautifully represents humanity's endless, restless pursuit of truth, reminding us that faith often reaches far beyond what we can prove with tangible evidence. Even back in medieval times, the agonizing journey toward becoming a better human being was always considered more important than the shiny object at the end of the road.
As we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us pondering something pretty incredible. Maybe some mysteries are simply meant to remain unsolved. Maybe they exist just to keep humanity searching, imagining, and constantly pushing the boundaries of what we think we know. The absolute greatest treasure might actually be the questions the Grail continues to inspire in us. If you enjoyed diving into history's greatest mysteries through evidence and thoughtful investigation with us, please make sure to subscribe, share, like, and leave some comments below. Join Historic Studio on our next journey into the unknown, because history still has so many secrets and we are really only just beginning to uncover them. Let me leave you with this. If the true, physical Holy Grail were somehow discovered tomorrow, how would it change what you believe today?